Morning, all. All right, so I had intended to maybe do a video on the Oilers. I was figuring, well, how am I going to do this? But there's a whole other angle now for a video on the Oilers, as according to Elliot Friedman, they are moving on from Jay Woodcroft. There's going to be a change behind the bench, which surprises me. I mean, he kind of argued with Mark Spector jokingly that he doesn't read Mark's stuff because Mark was talking about coaching this and that, whether or not they were going to make a change. But I don't think Woodcroft's the problem. Now, I wanted to talk about this and look at it from a little bit of a different angle because I've talked about the Oilers recently, right? And so I don't want to feel like I'm picking on them while they're down. I don't like doing that, so I'm not going to do it. One thing to keep in mind is on Money Puck's power rankings, which I've talked about before, and people said, "Oh, these power rankings don't mean anything." On the fancy stats side of thing, the advanced stats side of thing, the Oilers are playing well. They're number 3 on the Money Puck power rankings, behind only the Kings and the Wild. Yeah, the Wild are top 3. The Wild and Edmonton have had very similar seasons, while the Wild's record is better than the Oilers. Both teams have not quite had the goaltending that they were expecting to this season. And notice I'm saying they were expecting to because certainly the online community would have been divided on both teams when it came to the goaltending. They're number 3 in the NHL in expected goals for. Now, of course, expected goals for, the idea is simple. They're not getting, their shooting percentage is low, their save percentage is low. Eventually, some of those shots are going to start going in. So the 55.34%, and this is at 5 on 5, that their expected goals for sits at, is pretty good. It trails only the Kings and the Penguins. So my point in this is simple. They're not getting any bounces going their way. They're not getting the saves when they need them. And I don't know how much of that is on Woodcroft. I don't. Like, I really didn't think that a coaching change made any sense. That's why I haven't done a video on which coaches might be in trouble. I thought, I mean, there's some teams with rough records, but what would the point be? Be like Calgary coming out and going, well, we've decided to move on from Ryan Huska. Why? So, like, he's just started. And in this case, Woodcroft's record coming into this season was insane. I didn't put it on the board because I don't need to. You guys know Woodcroft's regular season record has been great. And if your answer is, well, they haven't got anywhere in the playoffs, okay, all right, I don't know if I fully agree with that. They did get into the conference final a couple years ago. However, being fired during the regular season means you're being fired for regular season results. And I just feel like, I don't know. I mean, is this going to turn it around? So we'll get to their upcoming schedule and the challenge that provides. But I wanted to look at the players on this team and the money they make. So you've got Draisaitl, 13 games, 5 goals, 10 assists, 15 points. We know McDavid's banged up. Is Draisaitl banged up? Neither of them look like themselves. There are numerous times now where they're on an odd man rush, and it just peters out. So for Draisaitl, of course, it's an $8.5 million cap hit. Draisaitl's the one you have to worry about because his contract is up first between the two of them. And if Draisaitl feels like, I don't know if I can win here, he very likely will say, I would like a chance to win. And it is interesting because we always do kind of get like, I can't believe he'd be that selfish. But it's not really that selfish to say, this team isn't going anywhere. I'd like a chance to go to a team that is. So Zach Hyman, 13 games, 7 goals, 6 assists, 13 points. That's what a hat trick will do for you right there. $5.5 million cap hit. Hyman's contract is probably going to age badly, but right now it's fantastic. And that's the point when you sign those long-term extensions, right? Bouchard, 13 games, 3 goals, 9 assists, 12 points. You know what? For $3.9 million, the fact that Bouchard is not this defensive stalwart, it's okay. He's not making $4 million a year right now. I think it's fine. You just need to make sure you got a defenseman out there that can cover for some of his deficiencies. And I don't know if they have one. And that's one thing with the Oilers, and one thing that then comes back to Ken Holland, right? I really feel like the wrong guy's losing their job for the way this team's playing. It just seems odd to me. So Nugent Hopkins and Kane are both sitting with 3 goals, 7 assists, 10 points in 13 games. Both of them making the same amount of money. I did a double take on Cap Friendly. I'm like, really? $5.125 million. I did, double check because those look like I got lazy and just copied the same numbers twice. But I did copy the same numbers twice, but it's not out of laziness, I promise. Kane, I think they want a little bit more offensively than what they've had so far. He's not on pace for the kind of season you want. Nugent Hopkins, it's fine. Like, he had the 100-point season last year. He's probably not going to do that again this year. Nugent Hopkins is a very good two-way forward. Really, the points are a bonus when it comes to Nugent Hopkins' game. And I don't think spending $10 million between the two of them is the problem. McDavid is definitely hurt. He is definitely not 100%, and it is really hurting the team. 2 goals, 8 assists, 10 points in 11 games. Those are not McDavid numbers. If you look at a chart, one of those fancy stat charts, McDavid is just all the way up, and then it is a precarious cliff this year. There's no way he's 100%. Now, his cap hit's $12.5 million, which is fine because it's Connor McDavid. And we know he's going to start playing better. We know that the goals and the points are going to come. The problem is, if he's playing while he's hurt, is that delaying him becoming the player we know he can be? So in other words, would he have been better off sitting out, say, 4 extra games, because right now he'd be producing above a point per game, or no, he's fine coming back, he can play through it? I mean, obviously it's up to him and the team's doctors and everything, but I don't know how much he's helping the team right now because he's not producing. Foegele, 13 games, 3 goals, 3 assists, 6 points, $2.75 million cap hit. I will hear no negativity about Warren Foegele. The work ethic's fantastic. Great player. Nurse. There's going to be some negativity with Nurse, isn't there? 13 games, 3 goals, 1 assist, 4 points. $9.25 million cap hit. That's high. I think with Nurse, I think for the role he gives them and everything, I think $6.5 million might have been a better number for Nurse, and I know there's going to be people in the comments saying that's too high for Nurse, but I do think that what that cap hit did was it made it so that they couldn't improve other parts of the team, which is not on Nurse. What gets me is when people get mad at the player and say, oh, the player got greedy and he got all that money. Get mad at the GM for giving him that contract. Don't get mad at the player. You know, if I went to YouTube tomorrow and said, can I have $4 million? And they said, sure. And then they're like, sorry, we can't pay out other creators because he took $4 million out of the funds. It's not my fault. They gave it to me. So at any rate, Nurse, is he paid too much? Yeah. And the reality is that contract goes on for a while yet. It's not one that they can buy out without a lot of pain for a long time. And he doesn't have the trade value either. So your choice, if you're the Oilers, is get Nurse going or pack your bags and you can go. He's staying, but you can go. Ekholm, 12 games, 1 goal, 3 assists, 4 points, $6 million cap hit. Ekholm hasn't been as effective, I feel, for the Oilers this year as last year, but I'm not going to say anything bad about Ekholm because I think he's a great defenseman. And then Holloway stands out to me as a player who's been all around it. He has a goal now in 13 games. I think Holloway is set to go on a little bit of an offensive run. I hope so. Good player, fun to watch, and they definitely need one of their young guys to develop at some point. We can get into the whole discussion of, Puljujarvi, Yamamoto, and other, top high-profile wingers that didn't necessarily develop. And then the question becomes one of, so is that the development that's the problem, or did they just draft the wrong players? The drafting the issue in Edmonton. If your answer to that is just, well, yeah, both, then I don't know what the answer is from me to you, other than, well played. So the goaltending. And the goaltending is the obvious, easy question mark here. Skinner, 2-5-1 with an .861 save percentage, $2.6 million cap hit. And when they demoted Campbell and it was, hey, they're giving the net to Skinner, all I could think in the back of my head was, isn't Campbell the one that's technically been playing better to this point? And so, yeah, Skinner, .861 save percentage after that win last night is an improvement. He was down as low as .814. So the numbers are going to come up. But then the question becomes, does this team have a starter? And I think that's a valid question. And again, unless you expect Jay Woodcroft to strap on some pads and a mask, I don't know how he's going to fix that. And I don't think Jay Woodcroft was an NHL goaltender. I think Grant Fuhr lives around Edmonton. I don't know that you can take him out of retirement and put him in the net. I don't know how effective he'd be, but, .861, so, Campbell, 1-4, .873 is the save percentage for him. $5 million cap hit, although with him in the minors, it's a $3.85 million cap hit the Oilers have with him right now. Proving that you can bury some money in the minors, but you basically then can use that money and have somebody there on about $1 million contract. So Pickard's the backup. He hasn't played yet. I'll talk about Pickard in a moment here. So other contracts worthy of note, Cody Ceci at $3.25 million, Kulak at $2.75 million, and McLeod at $2.1 million. Now, these contracts are not egregious, but this is the issue with Ken Holland, and it's the same issue he had in Detroit. Just a little bit too much for each player. Just a little bit too generous, maybe, with each player. So I talked about Nurse, but CC at 3.25. Could you get a defenseman at $2 million a year who can do what he does? Yeah, no, that works. That works. I don't need to go back and start the video again. But yeah, I mean, CC, that's the question, right? And then with Kulak, 2.75. Again, if you could get CC and Kulak both at $2 million, that saves you $1.5 million right there between them. So it all counts. You have some GMs that manage to shave that money off and have that cap space, and then you have GMs that don't. And when your team's winning, it doesn't matter. If the Oilers were 9-3-1 instead of 3-9-1, I'm not standing in front of this board. We're not complaining nearly as much about who gets paid too much money. But as soon as the team's losing, the guy who's getting paid too much money stands out like a sore thumb. Again, being a Canuck fan, you've got Tyler Myers right there. When the Canucks are doing well, Myers' contract isn't that bad. But when things get rough, that's where the finger gets pointed. Because you want to improve the rest of the team. You look at your cap situation and go, we don't have the cap space. Whose fault is it? Well, it's the general manager's fault when you don't have cap space. But, at any rate, it doesn't feel like Edmonton's making a change in that direction, which is odd to me, right? There's been speculation Holland's retiring at the end of this season, which may very well be the case. The one thing with that, though, is, so do you, as the Oilers... See, you're in a tough position, right? Do you really want to be seen as the team that's pushing Holland into early retirement if you fired him today? You looked at this team and said it's not performing the way we wanted it to, and you made the change there. Jeff Jackson's right there if they decided to make a change at GM. But that being said, I'm sure that there would be those who would say, well, no, about Jeff Jackson, you get into a whole other argument. Now in Bakersfield, if you're looking for help from within, Bourgault in 8 games in Bakersfield, 1 goal, 3 assists, 4 points. The top producers in Bakersfield all got called up. So as an Abbotsford fan, thanks, because made it easier to beat Bakersfield over the last couple of games. And McKegg, 8 games, 1 goal, 3 assists, 4 points. Yes, arm for a leg for an arm. Yeah, no, I think it too every time I hear McKegg. I don't know what it is. But at any rate, 1 goal, 3 assists for him. He's a depth forward. He obviously isn't going to give them offense. They need offense from depth players. They need that. They need that third line going. They need that fourth line going. We saw with Toronto last night. You tinker with your fourth line and make it more effective, you have a much better chance of being successful on the ice. And so if you're Jay Woodcroft behind the Oilers bench, what is your option here? What could he have done to have prevented his downfall today? I don't know if there's anything he could have done. I don't know if there's anything he would have done different, because what do you do? Now, in the AHL, Campbell in his first 2 games, it's been tough. .826 save percentage. Yvonne telling me he was being mocked endlessly last night in Abbotsford. And I feel bad for the guy. Now, obviously, he makes a $5 million a year cap hit. But from all reports, Jack Campbell's a really nice guy, great person, and I'd like to see him turn it around. So as much as I'd love to join in on mocking the guy while he's down, I can't do that. I just can't do that. And it has to be really tough for him. A season where he was, remember, to start the season, what was the headline? Campbell wins the starting job. Campbell had a good preseason, wins the starting job in Edmonton, and then it just fell apart. He had the one good game against Nashville, and it just fell apart. And it can happen to a goaltender. We've watched it happen to some really good goaltenders over the years, where all of a sudden things just aren't working their way. So Campbell is not turning things around in Bakersfield as of yet. We'll see if that changes. Pickard, just as a reference point, had a .939 save percentage at the time of recall. So basically what's happened is Bakersfield, who were off to, I think it was a 4-2 start, well, now their AHL season is not looking as good, because you've got Hamblin called up, various other leading scorers for this team called up, and to this point, like Lavoie was their leading scorer, and he doesn't have a point yet with the Oilers. So the effort has been there from that perspective, but they just don't have what they need to start really turning things around. That being said, last night's win over Seattle could be a watershed moment. That could be a big moment for them. In that, maybe your schedule is going to get easier, maybe nope. So the rest of November is tough. So they're at home against the Islanders tomorrow. So that's a winnable game. The Islanders 5-5-3, and they're trending in the wrong direction. Then on Wednesday, they have Seattle. Well, they showed last night they can beat Seattle. So this is a home game against Seattle. So could they have a 2-game winning streak under a new coach? Yeah, they could. Which officially would be 3 games because Woodcroft won his last game behind the bench. And then they have the trip that could really define whether or not they turn this season around. And last night, too, it was the first time I've heard it, but I know we're going to hear it a lot. Remember the Blues in 2018? Yeah, we all remember the Blues. It was 5 years ago. There's a reason we have to keep looking back to that one example. These are not the Blues. And this is a completely different situation. But at any rate, after the home game against Seattle, they have a couple of days off. And then next Saturday, they're in Tampa. The following Monday, they're in Florida. The following Wednesday, they're in Carolina. Then they're in Washington. So that right there, that 4-game road trip that will take place between the Saturday and the Friday of that week could very well define whether or not this team really turns things around. If they can win, I'd say 2. They win 2 out of 4 on that road trip, they're in good shape. They can beat Florida and Washington, lose against Tampa Bay and Carolina, or maybe they beat Tampa Bay and Washington, lose against Florida and Carolina. It's not that bad, right? If they win 3 out of 4, well, now we're talking about a team turning around. And then they come home. They play Anaheim, then they play Vegas, and then they go to Winnipeg. And that's the end of the month of November. The month of December is not much easier. They have a lot of tough opponents. They've already lost to teams that were expected to be or are at the bottom of the standings right now. So it is an odd time to make the coaching change. It almost feels like it's the anti-Boudreau. When Boudreau was fired in Vancouver, it was when the schedule was getting easier. So Tocchet's record was good, in part because the schedule got easier. In this case, the new coach comes in and it's okay. You got the Islanders, you got the Kraken, and then good luck on that 4-game road trip because these are 4 pretty darn good teams. Although, again, Tampa Bay, they've won 6 out of 15 so far this year. So who knows? But with the Oilers' luck, next Saturday it'll be, hey, Vasilevsky's ready now. Look at this. And then he'll pitch a shutout. So anyways, it is a really odd season for Edmonton. And I don't know if they're going to be able to turn it around from within. So the idea of a major blockbuster trade, with cap hits being where they are and with the salary cap situation being what it is, it has to be dollar in, dollar out. It's really difficult to make a blockbuster deal. It's not coming. So making a change behind the bench makes some sense if you feel like it's the coach's fault. I don't. You guys can let me know if you feel like it's the coach's fault. Again, I expect Jay Woodcroft to end up coaching somewhere else in the NHL, maybe by the end of this regular season. Why not? If you're Calgary right now, are you tempted to call Woodcroft and go, hey, do you want to come on as an associate coach? And I say that only semi-facetiously because, honestly, he's a good coach. If I was in a position where I felt like I needed another associate coach right now, I'd be calling him and saying, so how long is it until you're able to coach somewhere else? Do you have some kind of a clause in your contract that after being fired, you have to wait a certain amount of time? Or, how is this going to work? But as soon as he's able to coach somewhere else, as soon as the Oilers give that permission, I think he'll be a coach somewhere else because he's a good coach. He had the players playing well for him, just no puck luck. The shooting percentage really low in Edmonton, and I think it reflects more on the GM. And we'll see what people think. Did the right guy lose his job today? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. As always, don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you browse your way through. You just happened upon this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. And one final question. How do you fix it? How do you fix it? Does the new coach fix it? Or do they just start winning games now? Let me know your thoughts. Thank you guys so much for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.